Hello there, Steve-Os, and welcome along to this TV wrap-up episode. And in this episode, I'm going to be talking about Doctor Who. That's right, a TV series that I enjoy. Hopefully you guys out there do enjoy. However, though, I'm going to be honest with you here. There is one person in my life who, by the way, I do love so much, okay? I really do love her so much, who doesn't enjoy Doctor Who. And, you know, she doesn't like it, and that is my girlfriend, admittedly, my girlfriend Grace. But it's fine, because, you know, every time she says how bad it is and stuff, it's fine, especially when I'm in person. I tickle her, so, you know, so there we go. It's just her being very, very cheeky. But anyway, let me talk to you guys about Doctor Who, though. So if Grace is watching this, by the way, hi, I love you lots. But yeah, no, let me talk to you guys about Doctor Who, because obviously this is series 4. Well, for some fans it's series 14, for other fans it's series 1. It's a reboot from Russell Davies, who's basically taken over again as showrunner, and basically is the backstory to it. Obviously Doctor Who started back way in 1963. It ran all the way up until 1986, 89 I believe, and then it obviously got rested, it got cancelled. Then obviously there was a TV movie that came out back in 1996 with Sylvester McCoy as the 7th Doctor, who regenerated into the 8th Doctor, played by Paul McGann. TV movie happened. Then obviously that was the end, that was the last we heard of Doctor Who until around about 2003, when Russell T Davies announced that Doctor Who was going to be returning to the BBC, and obviously the new series would begin in 2005 with Christopher Eccleston as the 9th Doctor, Billie Piper as the companion Rose Tyler, and then ever since then we've had Doctors, so we've had Christopher Eccleston as the 9th Doctor, David Tennant as the 10th Doctor, Matt Smith as the 11th Doctor, Peter Capaldi as the 12th Doctor, Jodie Whittaker as the 13th Doctor, David Tennant again as the 14th Doctor very briefly, and now here we are in 2024, and we've got Ncuti Gatwa, who plays Eric, by the way, in the Netflix TV series Sex Education, who is now playing the 15th Doctor in Doctor Who. Now, obviously, there was a Christmas special that did come out last year at the end of 2023 on Christmas Day, and it was titled The Church on Ruby Road. Now, this was the first full episode that we saw Ncuti Gatwa as the Doctor. And I'm going to be honest with you, I did really love his performance in that episode, and I thought that his chemistry with Ruby Sunday, who is his companion, played by Millie Gibson of course, you know, again, I thought their chemistry was great and stuff, and I just instantly enjoyed the Doctor's kind of charm, charisma, you know, his energy, his vibe. You know, I thought all of that was great as, you know, as the Doctor, and as Ncuti Gatwa played him, you know, and it kind of got me intrigued and interested and a little bit excited into going into series 14 / series 1. So obviously this is, like, for some, like I said, some fans are calling it series 14, other fans are calling it series or season 1, you know, because I think the way how Russell T Davies wanted to kind of do this was he kind of wanted to reboot Doctor Who again. He wanted it to make it feel fresh, feel different, and in some cases that did kind of work, yes. I mean, obviously before this series began, he did even say that, you know, new viewers can just jump on in and join in the fun, you know, and they don't need to have any kind of knowledge as to what the Doctor is or who he is, or, you know, and all that stuff. Because, you know, this kind of gets introduced to the new viewers at the beginning of the series, and I'm not going to lie, we do get that. We do get the fact that, you know, that the Doctor is a Time Lord from Gallifrey, can regenerate and has 2 hearts and all of that stuff, you know. So a lot of new viewers can kind of jump into this series of Doctor Who and go, okay, well, I do know who the Doctor is, even though it's explained to me in the space of like the first 5 minutes of the first episode. But, you know, at least I know who he is, I know that he's a time traveller, etc, etc, you know, he travels with companions and stuff. So that's all well and good. And then obviously, you know, we have now got these episodes as well. Now, me growing up, I used to love Doctor Who, especially because on a Saturday night you used to have like 13 weeks of episodes of Doctor Who on a Saturday night, you know, which was great. But obviously as time goes on, you know, obviously the cost of living and the cost of like production and stuff like that, it goes up and up and up, and obviously the budget goes up and up and up for TV shows like Doctor Who. You kind of do see, like many other of your other favourite TV shows that are out there, you may see a slight decrease in episode numbers, and we have seen it over the last couple of years, and I think we're still seeing it even now. I don't know, I can't remember if Jodie Whittaker's era had 8 or 10 episodes. I think it might have been 10 episodes per series, but now we're seeing it decrease even further down to 8 episodes. It did kind of get explained as to why the episodes have decreased. I think it's because they're thinking of doing like spin-offs of different shows in the Whoniverse, as they call it, you know, and stuff like that. So that might be a partial reason. But for Doctor Who though, I mean, obviously we have 8 episodes this series, and I'm going to go through them and I'm going to give you my thoughts and opinions on each episode. So I'm going to start with the first episode of the series. Now, the first 2 episodes of the series actually we did get at once, and it did broadcast on the same night as the Eurovision Song Contest final, which took place around the world. And so yeah, we got treated to 2 episodes at once, which I thought was great, you know. So the first episode we did get was Space Babies. Now Space Babies for me, although it's a nice introduction for new viewers out there who've never seen Doctor Who before, as mentioned, but for me, I found it to be quite childish and quite silly, and you know, like, it didn't take itself seriously or anything like that, you know. Again, while I did enjoy the introduction of the Doctor and Ruby Sunday and their travels in the TARDIS together, and you know, and obviously again the Doctor's vibe, energy, charisma, all of that stuff, you know, as much as I enjoyed that, but at the same time I didn't enjoy this episode, unfortunately. You know, it was probably one of my least favourites of the series, and it kind of felt quite weak to open the series with that episode, in my honest opinion. You know, because had that have been the first episode that I'd seen, and then we didn't get the second episode, which I'm going to go on to in a minute, had we have only got that one episode, it would have kind of left me feeling like, okay, well that was the introduction to the series. Do I now continue with the series, or do I leave it at that? Because what I just saw was just too childish and too kiddie-like for my liking anyway, you know, like, you know, yes, have a bit of fun, have a bit of like flamboyancy in episodes and stuff, you know, but if you're making it like really childish, something that, I don't know, a preschooler would watch, then unfortunately I'm not that target audience, you know. I mean, I don't even know the last time I watched something that was probably for preschoolers. It was definitely when I was under the age of 10, I can confirm that. But, you know, but going into that though, I mean, yeah, that definitely wasn't for my liking, that episode. But the next episode that we did get though, which we got on the same day as the premiere of Series 1 or Series 14, however you like to call it, we got the Devil's Cord. Now the Devil's Cord was great because we had this pantheon god called Maestro, and Maestro was played by Jinx Monsoon, and I think that Jinx did a great role in, you know, in portraying Maestro as this like villain, this pantheon god. Now the Doctor has in recent episodes come across another pantheon god in the form of the Toymaker, which was David Tennant's last episode as the 14th Doctor, and the introduction episode to Ncuti Gatwa's 15th Doctor as well. So, you know, obviously the Doctor is a little bit frightened really that, you know, another pantheon god has been released and is out there and is causing mayhem and stuff and causing problems with music in the 60s and stuff like that. It had that nice 60s feel to the episode as well. There was a little bit of fun towards the episode as well when we had a little bit of a musical number, which I'm not gonna lie, I enjoyed it. I thought it was fine, you know. So yeah, you know, so there was that. Then we have the third episode of the series, which is titled Boom. Now, with Boom, it was written by Stephen Moffat, and I'm not gonna lie, but I felt like, you know, it was a great episode. There was one moment in the episode, which I'm not gonna dive into spoilers, but I'm gonna say now with Boom that, you know, there was a moment in the episode where my jaw literally dropped to the floor, because what happens, I definitely weren't expecting it to happen. But, you know, we've got this character played by Susan Twist, called Ambulance, and she's basically the villain in this. The Doctor is stuck on a landmine, and if he comes off it, then basically he and probably the rest of the world will just go kaboom. I liked the episode. I thought it brought a lot of emotions to it as well, you know, and despite the fact that in the first two episodes we get to see the Doctor being fun and cool and, you know, kind of giving off his charisma, charm, that kind of vibe, you know. But this episode, it kind of makes you feel bad for the Doctor, and it kind of makes you feel some emotion towards him, and even he starts to get emotional as well. So for that part of that part of it, I thought was really, really nice. And the fact that it was, you know, kind of a welcome back to Stephen Moffat as well, who wrote the series during Matt Smith and Peter Capaldi's run as the 11th and 12th Doctor respectively. You know, I thought it was really nice to see him back on board doing the writing for Doctor Who as well. Then we go into episode 4 of Doctor Who Series 1, Series 14. And this one is titled 73 Yards. That's it. I'm just trying to remember what the episode title was. Now, 73 Yards, it doesn't really have a lot of the Doctor in it. It's mostly an episode surrounding Ruby Sunday, and it's about this mysterious woman who is stood there in the distance 73 yards away from Ruby, and she's just basically stalking Ruby throughout time, you know, all the way up until Ruby is basically old, you know, and we see Ruby go through life without the Doctor in it and stuff like that. And it's really weird because even though people do see this woman 73 yards away, whenever they go up to her to talk to her, whatever this woman says, and we still to this day don't really know what this woman said, but whatever she says to these various different characters that speak to her, they basically run the opposite direction, and they don't want to speak to Ruby. They don't want nothing more to do with Ruby anymore. So, you know, it's kind of really, really interesting from that perspective, that episode. I mean, it did, I mean, the thing is, right, there is a part of me that did enjoy this episode, but at the same time, there was another part of me that didn't so much enjoy this episode. And the reason being is because in the first half, it was basically kind of like folk horror. It was kind of diving into that. And I thought that was great, you know. And I thought, okay, and there's a little bit of creepiness, there's a little bit of scariness to this. Great, you know. And I kind of thought to myself, maybe this is the direction that Doctor Who is going to continue going forward. I mean, we'll just wait and see. But then in the second half of the episode, though, and this is where it kind of fell flat for me, was the fact it then started going into the political side of things. And, you know, the two just didn't really match up. They didn't balance well together, you know. And the other issue is about this, and this is another problem that I had for the next episode, which I'm going to dive into in a minute. But the problem is this is Ncuti Gatwa's first series as the Doctor. Now, this is clearly obvious that while they were filming 73 Yards and the next episode, which I'm going to dive into in a minute, Ncuti Gatwa at the time was also filming the final series of Sex Education for Netflix. And I do feel like these two episodes that we see here, like in the halfway point, shall we say, is where you start to see, okay, during this point, Ncuti wasn't on set that much. He was away filming for Netflix. Okay. So it is kind of obvious, really. But, you know, either way, though, you know, during his scenes, even though it being very small in this episode, 73 Yards, I still enjoyed it anyway, you know, I thought it was fine. Going into the next episode, episode 5, that was titled Dot and Bubble. Now, again, Dot and Bubble, you know, we don't really see much of Ncuti Gatwa as the Doctor. We see a little bit more of Millie Gibson as Ruby Sunday, his companion, in here, but the story mostly follows around like this woman called Lindy. I think her name's Lindy Pepperbean or something like that. And to be honest with you, I'm not gonna lie, I really didn't enjoy this episode. Really didn't enjoy it, because I thought to myself, okay, well, this is going to be interesting, because, you know, there's kind of like a bit of commentary here about social media and the impacts that maybe it could have on us in the future, you know, especially with like the augmented reality or virtual reality stuff that's coming out these days as well. You know, it would just make us feel more connected to the internet and away from the outside world. I get it. But for me anyway, you know, I thought it was, I mean, I saw what they were doing here, you know, obviously during the scenes that Ncuti Gatwa does appear as the Doctor, you know, you kind of notice, because obviously, you know, Ncuti Gatwa, I mean, obviously he is, you know, he is a person of colour. And when he does enter this chat room to try and help Lindy and her friends, she basically blocks him out of the chat. But however, she's happy to accept help from Ruby because she's not a person of colour. So you can kind of get where the messaging lies within that episode, you know, like there is a little bit of racism there in the episode as well. I mean, you can also notice as well that, you know, all of Lindy's friends in this chat room, none of them are like, you know, none of them have got like different skin tones or anything like that, you know. So there is a little bit of racism that kind of plays here. The thing I really don't get as well is there's these monsters, these, I don't know, I guess you just call them slugs, because that's how I call them slugs, you know, and they were like eating all these people up, and obviously they were going offline, and, you know, they weren't speaking to Lindy or any of their other friends and stuff like that. And that's the thing that I don't get, is why did they do that? I mean, that question didn't really get answered for me anyway, and it kind of confused me a little bit more. I will say this though, Ncuti Gatwa's performance at the very end of this episode is very, very powering, and it's phenomenal. So I think I've never seen the Doctor in the way that I saw Ncuti Gatwa play him during the specific scene at the very end of that episode, Dot and Bubble. You know, I've never seen a Doctor perform like in that way, you know, or an actor portraying the Doctor in that way, you know. But it was very, very powerful, and my hat goes off to him. And fun fact for you, apparently that was the very first scene that Ncuti Gatwa filmed as the Doctor as well. So again, hat off to him as well. Well, when I say the very first scene, I think it was the very first scene from this series that he filmed as the Doctor. But again, for that to be basically his first scene to film as the Doctor, wow. That's all I'm going to say is wow. You know, and even the music scoring, which Murray Gold, who did the music scoring for Doctor Who between from 2005 to, I believe, 2019, 2018, 2019, you know, and he's just returned as well as the music composer. I feel like his music throughout this series as well, but especially the end scene of Dot and Bubble, I thought was really, really great and set the scene out really, really well. So then we go into episode 6, which is titled Rogue, and this episode is actually written not by Russell T Davies, but is written by Kate Herron, who actually directed the Loki series for Marvel over on Disney+. Now what's really funny about that is the fact that Russell T Davies did have an issue with Kate Herron because of the way how she wrote Loki as a bisexual character in the Loki series. And I guess in a way, you know, to make up for that, she wrote this story for Doctor Who, you know, and it does feature the Doctor sharing a passionate kiss with another man called Rogue, played by Jonathan Groff, in this episode as well. So I don't know if that's a way of like apologising to Russell T Davies, you know, for writing Loki as like, you know, a bisexual, but in a kind of not in a great way. I don't know if this is kind of like a letter to Russell T Davies, but you know, but this story did focus on that kind of love story between the Doctor and Rogue. And you know, I think a lot of people out there, I mean, while the episode was, in my opinion, pretty decent, you know, I mean, I'm not going to say that it was completely perfect, because for me, I'm not one that would sit there and watch period dramas, you know, like, for example, Bridgerton. Let's bring up Bridgerton or bring up Downton Abbey. Like, if you said to me, hey, let's watch Bridgerton on Netflix, or let's watch Downton Abbey, literally, that would switch me off, because those aren't my kind of TV shows that I would enjoy. And while this episode heavily kind of referenced Bridgerton and was heavily inspired behind those kind of TV shows, unfortunately that episode for me wasn't my cup of tea. I will admit though that I did enjoy the costume designs, you know, I thought they were great. I loved the fact that we had like these kind of birds that were kind of the villains. I mean, you know, they didn't get really much opportunity to shine on screen, admittedly, in my opinion. But when they did appear on screen, I did think they were okay. You know, I mean, obviously this love story between the Doctor and Rogue does have a heartbreaking end, and it does also give the Doctor a little bit of ambition to kind of go and find his true love, you know, because at the end Rogue does say to him to go and find him, and he does give him a ring, and the Doctor puts the ring on him and keeps it on him and stuff like that. And even to this day now, you know, I've seen filming pictures from series 2, and you know, and he's still wearing that ring. So, you know, I do think at some point Jonathan Groff may return back to the role as Rogue, and we may see that love story continue to evolve or continue, you know, and I think it'll be interesting to see where that story goes. Some fans won't really agree with it because of the fact that the Doctor was married before to River Song in previous episodes or previous series, played by Alex Kingston. So some fans probably won't welcome this, but at the same time, I think there'll be fans out there that does welcome this love story and stuff between the Doctor and Rogue. So anyway, that is my thoughts on the episode Rogue. And now we're going down to the 2-part series finale. We're starting off with episode 7, and then I'll go on to episode 8. Episode 7 was titled The Legend of Ruby Sunday. Now, Ruby Sunday, of course, she was abandoned on Christmas Eve in 2004 by a church. She was then taken into a foster care home, you know, and she was then brought up by a woman called Carla, and that's been her foster mum ever since for the last 20 odd years. And basically, you know, that kind of gets explained in the first episode, The Church on Ruby Road. Here we are now, and we're trying to get some answers to some of the big questions. There's also a mystery woman, who's been following the Doctor and Ruby on their adventures, and she's been playing different characters. She's been a portrait in the episode Rogue. She's been a hiker in 73 Yards. She's been Lindy Pepperbean's mum during Dot and Bubble. You know, she even played Isaac Newton's maid or mum. I think it was maid during the episode. What was that episode? Wild Blue Yonder. That's it, with David Tennant and Catherine Tate during the 60th anniversary episode. You know, and ever since then, I mean, she even played an ambulance. She was the ambulance in the episode Boom. She's been, you know, one of the kitchen staff in The Devil's Cord as well, and she was even a space station personnel, I guess you could call her, in the episode Space Babies. So all throughout this series, this woman, played by Susan Twist, she's been mysterious, no one knows who she is and stuff like that. In the end, we find out that she's now Susan Triad, and she's now got this technology, and it's an anagram, S-Triad technology. It means TARDIS technology. And that kind of makes you question, okay, how did she manage to get TARDIS technology? Well, anyway, we've also got the mystery surrounding Ruby's mum. So the Doctor goes to UNIT to ask them for help. Now, obviously, they do get a VHS tape of the night that Ruby was dropped off by a church on Christmas Eve in 2004, even though the footage is very grainy, but they use a time window to kind of go in and look at it a little bit further, you know, and recreate the setting, the scene, and all of that. Now, given the fact that, you know, the time window doesn't really help that much, you know, obviously it's basically rewriting time as the VHS is playing and stuff like that. You know, we know that Ruby's mum is a hooded figure and stuff, but what I will say is, you know, towards the end of the episode, for me, I loved it so much. Like, I loved it so much, and the reason being is because we got this big reveal that, you know, we were about to have another pantheon gods. We've had the toy maker, the god of games, Maestro, the god of music, and now we've got Sutekh, who is the god of death. Now, Sutekh is a villain who was in Doctor Who around 50 odd years ago, and he was actually voiced by Gabriel Wolfe. What's interesting is, all the way back in series 2, the Beast from The Beast Below, which is an episode that featured David Tennant's 10th Doctor in, was voiced by Gabriel Wolfe. Sutekh, back in 2024, is again voiced by Gabriel Wolfe, who, by the way, is now 91 years old. So it's completely legendary that Russell T Davies got Sutekh back, Gabriel Wolfe back, sorry, to play Sutekh in 2024. I thought that was incredible. You know, but at the same time, I thought to myself, this is bad. Like, you know, the god of death. Like, the Doctor is screwed. And, you know, like, I mean, it got to the point where I actually rewatched The Legend of Ruby Sunday again on the Sunday, because I actually watched this episode for the first time when I was away with my girlfriend in Brighton, you know, to celebrate her birthday. And before I went back home, and before me and her went and had breakfast together, I decided to sit down and watch it on BBC iPlayer. And, you know, it was so good that I thought I would go back on Sunday when I got back home and revisit that episode again. And I did. And I still loved it the second time around. You know, so I really, really enjoyed this episode. I really did. But it then leads into the finale, which is Empire of Death. Now, I'm not going to lie, but there has been some Russell T Davies episodes in the past where the finales have been fantastic, like The Sound of Drums, The Last of the Time Lords, you know, I mean, even like The Stolen Earth, Journey's End, you know, those episodes for me were really, really solid Russell T Davies finales. I think even, you know, the final episode that Russell T Davies wrote for the first time, which is The End of Time, which features David Tennant's last portrayal as the 10th Doctor, I thought was written great and was brilliantly done. But in terms of Empire of Death though, I mean, after a really, really big, ginormous cliffhanger, like The Legend of Ruby Sunday, I kind of felt like, you know, Empire of Death, which was the last episode, it kind of felt like a bit of a letdown. Letdown in a way that, you know, you've got Sutekh, who, yeah, has obliterated Earth, and all the other planets are dying out because he's turned them all to dust, basically. And, you know, you feel like the Doctor has lost and stuff, and, you know, and obviously Sutekh is reigning, you know, on his terror and all of that stuff. And even though the plot surrounding Ruby Sunday's mum gets resolved, and yes, it does turn out that the hooded figure is actually just an ordinary woman, you know, who just dropped Ruby off by a church when she was at the age of 15 because she was too young to parent a child and stuff like that. You know, and I do feel like the reunion that we got between Ruby and her real mum, I thought was great. as well, and it was handled well, I guess. But at the same time, I kind of felt like this finale was a little bit of a letdown. You know, I mean, yes, the Doctor managed to restore Earth and bring back all the planets and restore them and defeat Sutekh by basically flying him through the vortex, through the time vortex. It's funny because Sutekh reveals in this episode that he's actually been hanging on to the TARDIS this whole entire time since the Doctor's last encounter with him, which was during the Tom Baker years, which was, like I said, 50 odd years ago, you know, and this was when Tom Baker was the 4th Doctor. But, you know, for me anyway, I thought that this episode was a little bit weak, you know, and it felt like towards the end that Sutekh was quite a weak character, you know. I mean, yes, he defeated, you know, he basically ended the universe, ended the world and stuff like that, but then, you know, going through the time vortex, I mean, I found the scene to be quite comedic and quite funny because back in the you know, in the 70s, 80s, Sutekh was just a normal, regular person, you know, and then obviously we then find that Sutekh has now transformed into what looks like a part dog, part dinosaur, I guess you could say, with red eyes. And I'm not gonna lie, the design for Sutekh was really, really cool. But then the fact that, you know, all it took was the Doctor to stick him on a lead, tie the lead to the TARDIS console, and then fly the TARDIS through the time vortex, you know, and basically, in theory, taking Sutekh for walkies, you know, I mean, it kind of felt a bit silly, lame, ridiculous, but a little bit comedic at the same time. Like, I actually genuinely did laugh when this was actually going on, because I was like, just why, you know? Surely there's got to be a better payoff than this. There's a lot of questions that we still don't know. There's a neighbour that we got introduced to during the very first episode of Ncuti Gatwa and Millie Gibson's run as the Doctor and Ruby Sunday respectively. And there's this neighbour called Mrs. Flood, who's played by Anita Dobson. We still don't know much about her, you know, apart from she likes to break the fourth wall, and when I say that, she talks directly to the camera, you know, like talking to us, the audience, and stuff like that. People are speculating online that she might be Romana, who again was in the classic series of Doctor Who. People are also saying that she might be another Pantheon god, maybe the god of stories, because she seems to be telling a lot of those at the moment. We have no idea who she is, but apparently, from what I understand, Russell T Davies said that that character isn't going anywhere anytime soon. She will be, the story of her will continue into next year, so I'm hoping we kind of get a bit more answers about that in next year's series. But for me though, you know, I mean, she did say, you know, so now you know the story of the church on Ruby Road, but you're probably left wondering what happens to that time traveller in space, the Doctor. Well, I'm sorry to say, but his story ends in absolute terror. Now, you know, whether that does get resolved, I mean, whether that, you know, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I feel like Russell T Davies has kind of set a lot of plots up here to get a lot of social media engagement and stuff like that. And a lot of people talking about those mysteries and theorising about those mysteries and stuff. But at the same time, he hasn't answered them properly, and, you know, and he has admitted now, actually, in an interview, that that is exactly what he wanted to do. He wanted to get people to engage on social media and theorise and kind of speculate about some of these answers. I mean, it's all well and good people talking about the show and getting people to engage about the show online, especially, you know, when Doctor Who was first brought back, social media didn't really exist, or there wasn't a huge presence of social media like there is today, you know. And it's all well and good, you know, getting people to talk about it, but you do need to resolve some of these mysteries to keep people wanting more, you know. rather than setting them up, making them very climatic or anticlimactic, and there's just no kind of resolution, or the resolution to it is quite poor. You know, but I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next series of Doctor Who. I mean, Doctor Who won't be back now until Christmas, so that'll be streaming here in the UK on BBC iPlayer and on Disney Plus around the world. But you know, and again, that episode is going to be written by Stephen Moffat. I don't think he'll be writing any more for Doctor Who after this, so I think this might be it after Christmas for Stephen Moffat. I don't think he'll be writing any more episodes. But the episode is titled Joy to the World and does star Nicola Coughlan, who is one of the actresses that plays a character in the Netflix series Bridgerton. So there we go. But it'll be interesting to see what happens during the Christmas special. I do think we're going to explore the Doctor being on his own a lot more as well. So that'll be an interesting thing to see, because in the kind of the final few moments of the series, we do see Millie Gibson, Ruby Sunday bowing out from the TARDIS. But don't worry though, she hasn't gone far. She will be back in the next series of Doctor Who. She will be joining the Doctor and another companion as well. So we will be seeing her come back a little bit later on in probably next year's series. But there we go. So that is my thoughts anyway on Doctor Who Series 1 or Series 14. Let me know in the comment section down below whether or not you guys have watched this series of Doctor Who. If you have, then feel free to give me your thoughts and opinions on each episode, or let me know in general your overall thoughts on the episodes of Doctor Who from this series, whether you like them, hate them. Let me know in the comment section down below. If you have enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment in the comment section down below. If you are new around here and you like what you see, then feel free to hit that subscribe button down below to become a Stevo. I will be back with a movie wrap-up episode that will be coming up on Sunday this week at 4 PM UK time, so I hope you guys can join me for that. But until then though, it's goodbye, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys again in my next YouTube video.